Okay, so now I'm ready to work on my layer styles. You may say, well, wait a second, where are my layers? Well, F7 is a keyboard shortcut that is pretty important to know how to use, and that will make your layers appear and disappear. You can also go up here to Window, and you can see that Layers is visible. Now, where's all my text? Well, I'm zoomed in pretty far right now, so I'm at 200%. The way to zoom in and out is often Control plus and Control minus. There are some other tools that will do this, but this seems to be, to me, one of the easiest ways. So you can Control plus to zoom in, and then the space bar gives you that hand tool, and you can then move around. And the reason that I've gotten so close to this is so I can really see the effects that are taking place on my favorite thing. So I'm going to select my favorite things layer, right click, and choose blending options. So these are the blending options that we can apply to the text, and I'm going to turn on bevel and emboss. You can see a slight change right there. However, the controls for bevel and emboss didn't show up. These are just the general blending options. You have to click on the name bevel and emboss, and then we get some different choices here. There's different kinds of bevels. Main thing that we change here is the size, and that is the number of pixels that it is going to make that indent around the edges. It can make it look more 3D. Depends a lot on the colors that you have as well. I've been telling students, look, don't worry about the color of your text, because one of the blending options, one of the layer styles, is a color overlay, and that allows you to change the color of your text at any point. So you can change your text. Now we stay away from red because red can be very hard to see with your eyes, but we can pick some other colors, and of course what matters is what's behind it. So this color will work great unless I end up with a background that is also blue. So you want to make sure that it has a very high contrast. There are lots of other layer styles here. We like to play with a drop shadow a lot of times. Now look at the drop shadow. We've got a distance, spread, and size. So distance is pretty straightforward. You can see how far away the shadow is. And then you've got spread and size. So the size, it spreads it out over a larger amount of space. And so you usually want shadows to be nice and soft. If it just looks like it's doubling, like if we bring out spread and size and then increase the opacity, this just makes it much harder to read. So you do have to be careful. Opacity should be lower, and the spread and the size and should be kind of soft around the edges. You can also change the angle. So I'm changing the angle, and now the light looks like it's coming from the upper left. And so now we have a beveled, colored 3D drop shadow effect on my favorite things. Once again, we won't see the full effect until we know what's in the background, but it's fun to play around with those different effects without going too crazy. If I were to want to put that same layer style on my name, I could right click on the layer My Favorite Things, and there's an option to copy the layer style right here, allowing me to go to another layer and paste the layer style. When I do that, that super thin font, I can't really see the beveling very well. The drop shadow is kind of affecting the way that, let me zoom in, spacebar, makes it hard to read. I can turn these off and on. So for example, I can just take off that oops, wrong one. Take off the drop shadow using the eyeball there. And now I've got that bevel and emboss on there, and the color's the same. Let's go make a change. So if I double click on the color overlay, it'll actually open up these layer styles directly to that one. And I can say, well, I want this to be a different color. I can do a purple. I could go to bevel and emboss and maybe reduce the size of that bevel a little bit. So you can make changes to them after the fact. If you have a good starting point and then you just tweak them, you can avoid a lot of the same work again and again. This font, again, very hard to read, but there's some layer styles applied to my first two text boxes.